Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening for people joining from all over the world. My name is Monteiro, and I'm delighted to be here today with my colleague, Professor Javier Gimeno, and with GOL CEO, Paulo Kakinoff, to talk about a case that we wrote a few months ago with two other colleagues, Professor Betania Tanuri and Professor José Santos, and my colleague Anne-Marie Carrick. And some of you may have already read the case. Some of you may read it afterwards. What I'd like to do, just to kickstart our conversation, is to invite you to join us on Poll Everywhere. You can see, for those of you familiar with Poll Everywhere, you just go to my presentation and you just put my last name there, Monteiro. For those of you who have never done it, if you have a cell phone with you, just scan the QR code that you have there. You can also see in the chat a link, a URL code, so you can go there. So very quickly, we know, and I've seen some of the names, a lot of familiar names in the audience, some new friends there from the INSEAD community. Let me just ask where you connecting from today. So if you could please go and just mark in that map where you're connecting from, so we have an idea of where in this virtual room people are connecting from. And Kaki, in the best spirit of INSEAD, you already see that we have people connecting from all over the world. Some people from Brazil, South America, a lot of people from Europe, but also we see some people connecting probably very late in the evening in Asia, some people in the Middle East, North America. Very good. So welcome to all of you. Next question to you is this. I'm sure those of us kind of coming from Latin America, we would have definitely flown with GOL, but I've seen that a lot of people from all over the world. So have you kind of ever flown with GOL? And I will show you the response in a second. So we have about 50 people who already answered it. Let's see it. So 2/3 have not. So it's going to be interesting for them, Kaki, to get a better feel of what is GOL about. For those of you who have it, let me ask you this question. It's a tricky one, right? Because I'm asking you, how was your experience? So let's see what do we get there. And we have people, some green ones, some yellow ones, kind of nobody in the red or orange space. And airlines, and especially I think today in COVID times, might be tricky in terms of flying experience, but I'm sure Kaki is going to share with us a number of the things that they're doing to reduce pain points. This one is also interesting for those of you who have anything that say, no, this is what I enjoy the most flying with GOL. Is there anything that captured your attention in terms of, yes, this is something that I liked? Okay, punctuality, the people there, price and punctuality. And I think it's also interesting, right, for us to see some of the elements that kind of consumers highlight in terms of being important for them. A lot of it has to do now here with punctuality, with price, speed. Let me see what else is coming up here. By the way, those of you who have never used Poll Everywhere before, you can, as some people are already doing, right, you can upvote or you can downvote if you disagree. It's going to be particularly important because later on I will open open-ended poll for your questions to Kaki. So at that moment, feel free to see not only your questions, but also what your colleagues are saying. So punctuality, loyalty programs, smiles, price, on time, some people highlighting, right, the airplanes being brand new, etc., etc. We're gonna go back to some of those points soon. Thank you for answering those questions. Let me show this slide, and then I will invite Javier to share with you why we decided to write this case together. Those of you who have never heard about GOL or never flown with GOL, it is a relatively young airline, right? So we're talking about an airline that has kind of 20 years, IPO in 2004. Very interesting, right? Because you see kind of Kaki, right? And when I'm saying Kaki, I mean it's a short way of saying Paulo Kakinoff, right? People at GOL call him Kaki. He joined about 10 years ago, so it is a young airline, but with that history of 10 years of this management group this management team trying to do a lot of the things that we're gonna discuss in a second. So I think with that, let me stop sharing my slides and invite Javier to share a little bit with you why we wrote this case.
Thank you, Felipe. On developing the case, I mean, I've done several cases on the airline industry, and I want to start by thanking Kaki and all of the team at GOL, as well as the co-authors for making this opportunity possible. So I was teaching the core strategy class, and one of the big debates that we have in core strategy is about strategic positioning. And typically there is a debate between the view by Malky Porter, which basically says there are several ways of competing, the generic strategies, cost leadership, or differentiation, and you have to choose, right? So this code of strategy 101 is about choices. You can be all things to all people. You have to choose between cost leadership and differentiation. Versus another perspective that could be aligned, for example, with our colleagues Chan and Rene doing Blue Ocean strategy that says, Blue Ocean strategies simultaneously pursue differentiation and low cost. The aim is to break, not to make, the value cost trade-off. And the interesting thing about this case is that GOL historically had been a very traditional low-cost carrier in terms of being the low cost, basically bringing to the airline industry people who had not flown before. But when Paulo came in, he developed a new strategic direction, which in a way challenged the dogma, the Porterian dogma about positioning. So the opening quote in the case is this: when Porter said you should not be stuck in the middle, either low cost or premium, he did not and could not have considered the technologies that we have access to today. And what you will see in the discussion is that the case really deals about strategic positioning. Do you have to choose low cost or differentiation? Can you do both? But particularly, what is the role of technology of enabling the company to push the productivity frontier and be able to do both? A little bit of context. So as you know, the airline industry in general is a very challenging industry because of the high fixed cost structure, very low margins, high competition, a complex market structure where you have many different routes, different customer segments. And historically, the industry has had well-defined business models with labels, right? So you know whether you are a network airline or a regional or a low-cost carrier. And if you're a low-cost carrier, you look at all other low-cost carriers and you do what low-cost carriers do, right? So it is very traditional in these categories, which makes the situation of GOL quite interesting because it's trying to push these market categories. The Brazilian context was also very difficult because of during the first 10 years of GOL, there was massive growth in the industry and the economy. But since the time that Kaki took on from 2012 onwards, it has been a very challenging in terms of demand, also very challenging in terms of political risk, exchange rate risk, regulatory risks. And on top of that, there has been a change of the guard, right? So when GOL started, it was mainly competing with all incumbents that were started a long time ago, but many of them disappeared or were acquired. So the competition of GOL today is a more modern, more international set of competition, and therefore GOL needs to adapt to that. So just to start the conversation, I mean, so what was the main elements of GOL strategy? I think they are summarized here. So the purpose was to be the first for everyone, right? So you can see the tension with the Porterian view. A strategy to be the best service at the lowest cost, And then the strategy includes some pillars, some key elements such as safety, low cost, the team, the development of smart technologies, and the focus on service. Now, we'll go in more detail, but some of the key elements of the strategy is the first, leveraging the smart digital technologies. We'll talk about that later. And the focus to try to break the value to cost trade-off is to use those technologies to eliminate pain points on the traveler. So the idea that by doing that, you can increase willingness to pay, but also reduce the cost at the same time, particularly focusing on the frequent travelers, the frequent flyers. To focus on the comfort, but also the productivity on board. And of course, frequent flyers should be willing to pay for that. To create a culture of innovation, right? So because digital technologies is not just about what you can do today, but the ability to keep ahead of the competition, reinforced by a strong focus on brand and loyalty. And all of this without sacrificing the low-cost leadership in the Brazilian market. So this is a little bit of the topics that are discussed in the case. Now, Felipe, back to you.
Thank you, Javier. And I think as Javier was saying, I mean, we both teach the case with different angles, right? He teaches this in his core strategy class here at INSEAD. I teach this in a kind of program for our executive MBAs, and I see some of them are also online today. And Kaki, let me thank you publicly once more for hosting kind of every year that we go to Brazil, right? You and your team host us at GOL's headquarters and say, no, that's how we're doing things, exchange ideas. So my question to the audience is the following. Javier was saying, no, they're trying to innovate, reduce the pain points. I mean, how many of you associate airlines with innovation? Let's see what we get in there. We have about kind of 36 people answering. If you don't know what to do, you just see this QR code in front of you, take your phone, scan it, and this should take you to that poll. And many people don't associate, right? So actually 2/3 of you say, no, it is airlines and innovation might not be the most obvious association. Let me show you just 2 slides, and then I will go back, stop sharing slides, invite Javier, and then Kaki, we will bring you to the conversation, right? And then you're gonna share the real stuff from the protagonist perspective. So 2 things that caught my attention when we were writing this case. First, and I still remember, I'm Brazilian, as you can gather from my accent. I moved from Brazil 20 years ago in 2002. And I still remember kind of the early years of GOL and having this idea, those guys are different, right? They have something different in their kind of approach. And it's interesting because you see, right, the title, and for those of you who can read Portuguese, you're gonna see there, right? GOL, it is a smart airlines. Right? And smart airlines in the past had different meanings in terms of how you could afford to fly. It was also innovative in certain things. But it's interesting, I think what the Kaki and his team managed to do is kind of somehow rescue and give new meaning to smart airlines to become more and more smart in terms of digital, more and more smart in terms of innovation. One final slide, and I stop. This comes directly from the case, and Javier, I even kept the number of the exhibit just also to illustrate how deep is this case, right? We have kind of dozens of exhibits. It's a very long case, kind of thanks to the broad access that GOL gave us to the company. But basically what that exhibit shows is that over the past 20 years, almost every year, they were coming up with some new innovation. A lot of it has to do, right, with the customer interface, but also if you go to kind of closer to now, right, you see things like face recognition, you see things that they do with luggage tag on cell phone, many things that might sound obvious now, they were not that obvious when they did it, let alone in a country like Brazil. And I think later on, I will invite Kaki also to share with you some of the latest that they're doing. So I think with that context, I will stop sharing slides, turn it back to you, Javier, and then Kaki will join the conversation. I know that Javier has some questions to you.
All right. Thank you, Felipe, and welcome, Kaki. So we are going to have a few questions based on the case, and then we, of course, open up to all of our audience. But I would like to start with this decision by you and the company to challenge the industry dogma, right? So this is an industry that, because of the fixed costs and the inertia, traditionally people have followed a very traditional business models. And the strategy is to reinforce what they're already doing. So if you are a high service differentiation, you try to increase that. If you are a low cost, you try to become even lower cost, right? So you go down that tube. But what you did is essentially change to try to explore this space in the middle, right? To be able to do the best service at the lowest cost. Can you share with us what motivated you to explore that space, empty space in a way? Was that something about the external conditions in the industry? Something about the history of GOL that led you to believe that GOL could perform well in that space?
So firstly, I'd like to say hello to everyone. Felipe and Javier, thank you very much for all the attention you have paid to our company and all the efforts to produce the case study. And for those ones who didn't have the opportunity to read the case, I will just give this first answer a little bit longer, just in order to, to share some of the circumstances that drove us to the strategy we have deployed since 2012. So quickly answering to your first question, Javier, why we did so? Basically, because it was needed. When this company became 12-year-old, that was 2012, exactly the time when I joined GOL as the CEO. Our EBIT margin was minus 12%, and the company stopped his growth pattern since 2001. So the first phase of the company was completely different than the second. We were market introduced as the first low-cost, low-fare airline in Brazil, right after the government replaced the former pricing model, which was given upon a price build-up strategy. So every airline in Brazil, some of those pretty famous, you might remember Varig, VASP, Transbrasil, and TAM, they were every 3 months presenting to the government, to the civil airline authority, their cost, and they were allowed to achieve a markup upon their cost structure. So that was a model incentivizing the airlines to offer more services than ever, and the fares were pretty expensive. I was born in a middle-class family, and the first time I flew in Brazil was when I turned 14. And my parents, they really struggled to buy me a ticket. It was done in 10 installments to have, a 1-hour flight from São Paulo to Goiânia. It was simply not accessible to regular person like me. So then the year after the market deregulation imposed by the government, GOL surges as the first low-cost, low-fare company in the region. I mean, considering the whole South American market, and that was completely disruptive. Just to give you an idea, in 4 years, the company became the 5th company in Brazil to apply, considering every segment, to apply for an IPO. And we were, in 2006, the most valuable airline per aircraft in the world. It was so disruptive that 3 out of the 4 prior competitors, they simply disappeared. Varig, VASP, and Transbrasil, they broke. It was not possible to compete with. And some years later, TAM was sold to LAN, and then they created the LATAM company. That model was not only successful, but the company's founder, here you can see Constantino Jr., the current chairman of the company and the first CEO at GOL. I am the second one. This guy appeared in every relevant Brazilian business magazine at that time. And here you can read in Portuguese, GOL, the company of the year. And this kind of recognitions were done because we simply changed the way the Brazilians travel. When GO started 2001, there were only 30 million air tickets sold per year in Brazil, considering every player. Last year, I'm sorry, pre-pandemic year, we sold GO itself sold 37 million. The total market now is 100. And that was drove by GO, basically applying to the market the same effect that every low-cost, low-fare company applies in every market. I mean, it makes it more accessible. But what happened then? The newcomers were basically doing the first lesson learned by every new entrepreneur. So you should copy what's working very well in the market, and add on top of it your own sauce, your own formula. So they have basically done what they were supposed to do, which is to emulate some of the benefits that we were offering to our passengers. They were never capable of offering the same fare level. And they add to that a much better customer experience than we were offering. So by 2012, we didn't find ourselves even in the position to address the corporate travelers market. We found, oh, we are too basic. We are fully dedicated to VFRs. We had a considerable amount of business travelers, but we were basically attracting only those ones attached to companies, clearly prioritizing lower fares to buy their tickets. And they are far from being the vast majority of the companies in the market. Actually, their executives and the business travelers typically are looking after other attributes from an airline, such as on-time performance, bigger seat leg room space, or even Wi-Fi access. So what was the need behind it? We need to compete against newcomers, approaching through a better set of features, not only the business travelers, but also some of the leisure travelers that were, for the first time, thinking, does it make sense to pay less, not much less, but less to fly GO instead of having a 5 or 10% premium price and get a much better set of features and benefits flying with another competitor? And then we challenge ourselves, and then exactly thinking about this Potter dogma, or I mean, is really not possible to be or to build a hybrid company which could address both groups. Those are pretty different, the business travelers and the visiting friends and relatives, within the same aircraft, the same metal tube. And the answer drove us to the following results. 2019, the last, I would say, clean year for a matter of comparison. I mean, prior to the pandemic in Brazil, we delivered a, meaningful 20% EBIT margin. And we were, in 2019, for the 5th year in a row, the market leaders position that we did achieve in 2014. And we expanded it up to 38% of the market. What we are offering to the customers, basically, we have 2/3 of our plane offering you the lowest possible fare you can get. And nobody was capable of emulating it, because we are the only company operating a single fleet type in Brazil. And that makes a huge difference when you intend to produce the lowest possible CASM, the cost per seat mile or seat kilometer you choose. And the second, we were also capable of offering to the first 5 seat rows customers an experience superior to any European, either European or domestic airline. I mean, you can fly and go, you can get, by occupying one of the first 5 seat rows, you can have a 35 inches legroom, you can get access to a full service, you can buy on board or have it for free, pretty much dependent on your loyalty program status. You can have since nuts up to red wine. You can get access to Wi-Fi on board, and we were not by chance the first airline offering it. You can get priority boarding. You can have, I mean, you can collect miles for your loyalty program. So this is really a full domestic experience, while the first guys in the first 5 rows paid on average $300 for 1,000 kilometers flight, and on the same plane, on the same flight, seated 20 rows behind me, I can have one person who paid $30 to take the same plane. So that's, I mean, basically the formula we had. It was built so, Javier, due to the need to compete and to make our business profitable again.
Super key, and I think it's a perfect connection to our next question to you, which is, somehow the use of technology allowed you to combine this kind of focus on cost at the same time offering this special experience. I still remember, Kaki, in the GOL headquarters, you say, you like to transport people in a way that removes all the pain points and all the friction. And let me just put one example and ask you to maybe share a little bit more. So people might be, yes, Wi-Fi, everybody does it, or I don't know, whatever. But no, you're doing things like you have the partnership with Google and Waze, right? And then if you are arriving earlier to the airport, right, it automatically suggests an earlier flight. So all those things that you're offering a kind of better experience to your passengers. I mean, can you share a little bit about, how you really using technology to allow you to do this?
Felipe, thank you very much for the question. Here, I would like to split the technology word in 2 different dimensions. Nowadays, whenever we talk about technology, we are clearly associating the term with the digital solutions, and that's right. I mean, I would say 90% of the solutions we have deployed are pretty much associated with the digital tools we have access already for some decades, and they have been enhanced and improved every single year. So, but I would like to first mention one completely analogic solution, which is also a very good translation of what we have tried to say by selecting intelligence as one of our 5 corporate values. We were studying when we decided to implement it. It was the year 2016. We were already studying for 12 years the best fabric to cover our seats. And the intention was always to find something that could replace the former solution. It was really literally fabric. And our customer experience team always dreamed about a leather seat, because this is much value. It's perceived as something much more valuable from the customer's perspective. And it was, a kind of contradiction in comparison to a low-cost, low-fare concept we always defined. When the artificial leather was developed in a certain level, which could provide almost the same touch, the same feeling that the natural leather is offering, but much more resistant in order to replace the fabrics, but also and simultaneously spare some cushion volume, which could afford us to change completely the seat appearance at the same time that we were saving 80 kilograms in every single aircraft by sparing, by eliminating a considerable amount of foam, of cushioness. We fully paid that investment back in 6 months through fuel consumption reduction, which has a direct correlation with weight, at the same time that we were offering to the customer a much superior experience. It is not that was not all. We also spared 5 minutes in turnaround times, because that sanitary protection, which is mandatorily applied in every headrest for every landing, for every turnaround time process, just by eliminating it and replacing by our staff cleaning with alcohol, a disinfectant, the artificial ladder cover, we spare 5 times per turnaround times, which means at the end of the day, considering that typically and considering our average stage length, one GOL aircraft will perform between 8 to 10 stages. It means that by the end of the day, the same aircraft and the same crew could perform an additional flight. A São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, the shuttle service flight, which is a 45 minutes duration flight. So that enhanced a lot the customer experience at the same time that it reduced costs. So whenever it talks about technology, it's also, we would like to mention the broader aspect of that word is the knowledge based on the technicalities that a company which is enhancing, refining, performing better and better its original basic concept, which is to be a low-cost, low-fare company, is achieving every single year. But technology boosted it to a much higher level. The example you have just shared is possibly one of the most, illustrative I could get. We had locally developed, it was our own team, the GOL Lab team. We developed the following device. Once you, being a GOL customer, allows us to do so, every time that you have a flight booked with us, we will start to monitor, we start to verify your geographical location 4 hours prior to the departure. And we are basically comparing that information where you geographically are along those 4 hours and the traffic conditions provided by the database such as the Waze. Whenever the algorithm verifies that you're not going to make to arrive at the airport at the proper time, it means that you're going to lose your flight, we will send you a push notification, and that push notification will provide you a solution. Here you can choose among the following 2 or 3 options the next flight you can get, and you're going to be charged for it. By doing it, we will offer you a highly appreciated problem-solving alternative, because you are in a rush, you are, in the middle of a business meeting, and you are worried because you're not gonna be at home by the end of the day because you are about to lose your flight. So you just need to type, okay, I like that flight, that alternative, and your problem is solved. At the same time, your original seat is now available to me for a last-minute sell, which is, by the way, the highest fare I can get. If the opposite happens, if you arrive earlier at the airport, and there is another flight, an earlier flight to the same destination that I can offer you based on empty seat availability, I will give you the chance to arrive at your destination earlier than expected. And also, that change will be for free, because it gives me more time to find another customer to sell a last minute seat. So this kind of solution, I mean, homemade and fully customized to the kind of passengers that we are transporting, allowed us to claim that promise. We will be the first for everyone. It does not mean to be the first, I mean, or the market leader. It happened to be, thanks God. But it's to be like, we are promising you that we will put all the efforts I have available to transform my product as your natural first choice, either because you are extremely price sensitive customer, or you were the most demanding business traveler in the country. That's, I mean, the challenge we had applied to ourselves.
Very good, Kaki. Thank you. There are a lot of people with a number of questions. So let me first say, if you now go to Poll Everywhere, there's now a new poll where you can pose any questions to Kaki and you can upvote and like, dislike the other questions. So Javier and I have just one final question to you, and then we're going to go to the audience and see what are the questions for you. So
okay,
not surprisingly, Kaki, I think Javier and I, we had lunch together today and we were saying, no, wow. So many of those challenges in normal times. Can we imagine what it means for you to kind of be leading GOL in COVID times? So I was wondering, just to kickstart the discussion, maybe you can give an example of what are the changes, right? And how do you see airlines, the industry, GOL itself? But also maybe you can also give a little window into your leadership journey to see, what it means for you as a leader, CEO of a company like GOL to be leading in COVID times.
Felipe, unfortunately, we are among the very few industries severely impacted in the world. I mean, there are thousands negatively impacted, but I mean, at such a level, basically it's the tourism industry, and we are part of it. So that was the right word to describe it. Is a nightmare. But we had one, I mean, advantage in comparison. In comparison to several different segments, it was basically impossible to be in denial since that pandemic started in Asia, because the airline industry was impacted in every single country where the COVID arrives since China, I mean, by October 2019. So we are in South America among the last countries struggling to find a solution to deal with the pandemic. Personally, when it arrives in Italy and Spain, that was late December 2019 and January 2020, I was 100% sure of the following. I do not know whether the virus will cross the Atlantic, but if it happens, definitely we will suffer the same pain. And then by March, New York was, I mean, in the middle of the COVID hurricane. It was just a matter of time to have the virus arriving in Brazil. So we had a meeting with the COMEX, the executive committee, and a spontaneous sentence was produced at that time, and that sentence couldn't better describe what we would be about to face over the following months. I said to the team, we are about to start a desert crossing phase, and we do not know how long it's going to last. I mean, what's the extension of sand that we will need to deal with, nor the temperature, how hot this is going to be. And this is not the worst part of the challenge. The worst is we're going to need to rely on the current amount of water we do have, which means the current liquidity available, because definitely we will not have access to credit, considering that this industry will be so dramatically affected and the whole world is under pressure at the moment. And this is exactly what has happened. So the measures taken, those made the huge difference, starting by ourselves. As you know, here we are sharing the same office with the vice president. So we are 5 here in the same room. And since the very first day, we pledged to literally take care of each other in 3 dimensions, exactly like this. Food, the way we are gonna, feed our body and our souls, because it's a huge and tremendous psychological challenge. So taking care of properly sleeping, taking rest, having the appropriate diet. To face with it, like preparing ourselves to run a ultra marathon. This is exactly what we have done through a very disciplined way. Second, we need to take care of our team. We are 15,000 here. So we provided every single week a live interaction with each of the 15,000 employees we do have. Sometimes basically sharing with them a brutally honest scenario, but keeping them informed and having something to help them to understand what was going on. And furtherly, we said to ourselves, nobody, we will not expect, nobody will disembark. We are proud of the 2 best decisions we took. We didn't take the easiest way. We didn't file for Chapter 11. So we have accomplished with every single financial obligation we had since the beginning. And also we have the same number. We didn't reduce our workforce. Some of our employees left the company through a natural turnover effect, and we did not replace them. So we are now, instead of 15,000, we are 14,000. So that spared us a considerable amount of money, but we didn't force anybody to leave the company, because we did also understand how important it was to keep and to protect the jobs during that period. So how we did that? We are literally living in the office already for 18 months. And we are discussing every single day how we could simultaneously spare every single cent we can and protect our network, transporting people, vaccines, and everything which is needed to fix this pandemic as soon as we can. So this is basically how we have steered the company since then.
Thank you, Kaki. I love the desert and the desert crossing. So I will start showing the questions from the audience. As I show this, maybe can you just say in kind of 1 minute, can you see the end of the sand or still in the middle of the desert?
Yeah. It is November, because then comes the Brazilian high season. And considering the forward bookings, we are about to resume 85 to 90% of our pre-pandemic capacity. So this is the scars caused by the pandemic will last, some of them forever. We were under a terrible pressure, and it does change lives and mindsets. We were going to struggle to deal with some of our liabilities, maybe for 1 or 2 years, but everything is dealt with the suppliers. Everything has been negotiated, and we know what is ahead of us. But we are alive and kicking, so we can do it again.
Thank you, Kaki. So you should be seeing in front of you. There are loads of questions there. So feel free to pick the ones which you, right? I mean, we can start with the most voted one,
Okay.
but then feel free also to pick the other ones and give maybe short answers so we can answer the largest number of questions.
Good. 36 years ago, we had the case study People Express with more or less the same ideas, except, the same ideas except technology. They are not with us anymore. Who GOL will avoid this fate? Great question. Guys, I would emulate another example. I'm sorry for repeating that cliche. It was not Apple creating the digital camera, nor the mobile phone. I mean, it's the way you translate good ideas into good execution, and in our case, based by technology. I mean, the question brings the most important part of the answer. We do now have technology today. We can predict, we can enhance results, and also we have one unnegotiable dogma: the lowest cost always wins. Once you do not neglect customer experience. We are now offering the lowest fare in the market, and we have been able to keep, even during the pandemic, a 40 NPS. Considering the low cost, low fare companies in the world, this is pretty much above. I was positively surprised by you guys answering by the beginning of the poll, the beginning of the presentation. How was your experience with GOL? Please tell me, how many airlines offering fares starting at the level of $30 to fly 1,000 kilometers, which has a positive NPS, which was expressed also by your answers. Don't get me wrong. We are far of being the ideal company we are aiming to be. We have several pain points. We are, mainly during the pandemic, we are imposing to the customers several restrictions. There is no meal on board available. It's not allowed due to sanitary reasons. The sanitary authorities are not allowing us to do so. We have dramatically reduced our network. We have just migrate our passenger services system from Navitaire to Sabre. We had our customers along the last 5 weeks are really struggling to get access to some of our basic information, this kind of thing. So please, we are not, flattering ourselves by saying we are good, not at all. Actually the opposite. We had repeated every single day for already 12 years that the day we find ourselves as the well-done company is exactly the time we're gonna start to fail. But once you can combine the lowest possible cost with technology, you can also deliver a highly appreciated product to the customers. When Felipe mentioned, also by the beginning of the presentation, the poll we performed towards the customers when we were about to reposition our brand, we have asked them, if you could freely choose an option for an airline, for that experience, for the air travel, what would be, the ideal solution? And 60% of the passengers utilized the figure of the time machine, because they said, I just would like to be immediately transported from the point A to point B. And that concept, that vision, drove our product and our sentence. We had adopted the claim, more life to your time. Because if you get on board and you are distracted by entertainment, if you are comfortable enough to take a nap, if you are not worried about the time you arrive in the destination because your plane is on time, if you wanna work, you have the Wi-Fi to get access, you simply don't notice that you are wasting your time taking a plane. Sometimes you are doing the opposite. You are making that one of the most, interesting part of your day, because you can read your book, you can relax, you can sleep, you can work, you can watch a movie that you were expecting to see already for months. That concept is provided by technology. So once you have the lowest cost and you can offer on-time performance, new airplanes, a really high level of safety and security feeling, and you are offering this kind of distractions, you are getting as close as possible to this time machine effect. So that's the difference between People Express and all the other stuff. Just is that something unique to GOL? I don't think so. See what EasyJet, Copa Airlines, Southwest, the company which has clearly inspired GOL since the very first day. Even Ryanair offering now business fares. They are all moving towards this hybrid model, through different levels of adoption. And not by coincidence, they are among the top 20 highest EBIT margins in the airline segment. So that's the basic difference. The other question, may I move ahead, Felipe?
Sure, Kaki, and I think we are, not surprisingly, right, with such an exciting topic, we are running out of time. So maybe why don't you pick one question that you really like there in the list, and then I'll turn to Javier because I know he has one final question for you. So
okay, so I will take the sequence, and then you can stop me because those were the most voted ones, and I think that it will be more appreciated. The key innovations in the airline industry in the next 5 to 10 years from revenue management. Guys, basically, we intend to know exactly the optimal point between the following two decisions. The highest possible fare you are willing to pay before giving up on flying. And second, the highest possible fare you are willing to pay before giving up on flying with GOL. This is revenue management through data science, and we are getting really close to that. We are getting, and not only we, the airline segment, but everyone, we are now getting access, or it's possible to know how often you fly, what is your favorite seat, what are your favorite routes, which kind of meal you want to get on board, what's your family constitution, where do you used to fly, and when for holidays and for vacations. So revenue management is going to be all about individual offers being built every single day and coming to you magically exactly when you are considering to buy an airline ticket. This is going to be revenue management. Ops is also enhanced by data science. You can imagine that now I can recollect the last 100,000 landings we had at the Santos Dumont Airport in Rio de Janeiro, and then predict for every single day of the year what's the likelihood of getting the airfield being blocked or the weather condition not allowing me to operate like this, the total amount of fuel we are going to likely need to perform at that day precisely, saving fuel, saving time, avoiding rescheduling. This is going to be ops, and the same to MRO. We can now predict it with a level of accuracy never even wondered before, when exactly one single screw of a second stage of the engine is supposed to be broken, and then replace it 10, 15 cycles ahead of the problem really shows up. How did you build an organization that enables you to stay ahead of competition in terms of innovation and customer service? That's culture, and not preventing yourself of changing the organigram whenever and how many times is needed to fastly adapt your team to address a continuous changing market, a pretty much volatile condition. So if you have the proper culture, and we invested really hard on it, it was between 2015 and 2019, 35–40% of my personal time was further dedicated to reshape the company's culture. This is how we had enabled ourselves to stay ahead. I think those were the main questions to be answered, right?
Yes, thank you so much, Kaki. Up to you, Javier.
Yeah, so Kaki, I just want to share a reflection. So when I teach this class in the MBA, right? So my inclination and many of our MBA and EMBA students is to be analysts, right? And to crunch the data, look at the way the industry is structured. But the one thing that I have learned from the case and from you, Kaki, is to be careful about how much do we learn from these strategy dogmas, and by looking at the competitors, listening to the consultants and so on, right? Of course, all of available information is important, but I think creating a culture that allows you to challenge those dogmas, to explore new opportunities, I think that is a real foundation of strategic agility. And particularly in a world like this with a very high uncertainty, I think that's a key source of advantage. So I think this is something that I try to sell with the kind of the more consulting or analysis oriented students. And I think these are very, very impactful lessons for us. So Kaki, thank you so much for opening the doors of GOL to us and being able to share this story with many of our INSEAD alumni, students, and associates. Thank you, Kaki.
Felipe, Javier, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much for your time and your attention. We are really proud of this privilege of having your attention. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaki. Thank you, Javier. In the spirit of go on flight time, we start on time and we finish on time. Thank you all. Looking forward to seeing so many of you very soon somewhere in the world. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.